eschatology is awesome, but when you start talking about God Himself laid out in the Bible a plan that He will come back at a specific time. See, some people think that, okay, God says, okay, this is fine. I'm going to send my son and then tell you when he's coming the first time, but I'm not going to really tell you anything about the second time coming, but I'm going to give you some signs. But you go into much deeper. You actually believe that this year could be is the start of the tribulation period.
Yeah, that's right. I do believe it looks like it's this year, and there's just so many things pointing to the 7 years of 2010 to 2017 that seem to line.
Yeah. But as far as how did you get interested in this field of examining the times that we live in?
I guess when I started seriously trying to study the Bible and look at things, the field of eschatology was very, intriguing. And I read any book I could get my hands on for the most part. And I wanted to go to Bible college and seminary. Thought I was going to be a pastor.
Yeah.
And I think what really got me going was it was the day that I was going to the school to try to enroll that I came across Grant Jeffrey's book, Armageddon Appointment with Destiny, which some people might be familiar with. And he really seemed to lay out more detail than other people had before.
Yeah.
And though he wasn't correct in some of his analysis there, I think there was a lot of valid things he had did. And so from that point on, I kept looking at different models or finding different things.
Yeah.
But to go on further, it was quite a bit after Grant Jeffrey's book that I came across, I did exact day counts because my logic was, well, if Daniel 70 weeks did that, well, 69 weeks if you go exact day counts, and we can come to Palm Sunday in 32 A.D., just like Sir Robert Anderson did in his book. Then I said, well, why don't we do that at now? And some people had done that. Grant Jeffrey had done that, and I think he had used somebody else's material too that showed that 2,520, these 360-day years from when Israel returned from Babylon, from the Babylonian captivity. If we went from 537 B.C., it would come to 1947 when Israel's reestablished. Kind of a parallel. And then Hal Lindsey had done the same thing with Chuck Missler in one of their little books that wasn't published very much, but they had shown the same thing from the ending of the 70 years of desolations of Jerusalem. If we went that same period of time, we'd come to 1967 in the Six-Day War when they regained Jerusalem. So it's this parallel thing. Well, they all ended at this point. And I said, what if we look further and go on from that point and do exact day counts? And 40 years was one of those numbers that's used throughout the Bible. So what I first done is to calculate 40 360-day years and find out what date it landed on. And with the help of the computers, you can see where that would land on in the Jewish calendar. And that's what got me going once I did that.
So you use computer programs to come up with the exact days? Because I was always wondering how you knew how many days exactly, like 500 some days or 1,000 days. I said, wow, did he sit up there and just count like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5?
For a while, I did count manually until I found one of the programs.
Wow.
But, so there was the 40 years. What I had found is 40 years from June 7th, 1967. 360-day years landed on November 8th, 2006.
Yeah.
Of course, we're beyond that point, but that day happened to be the 17th of Heshvan, the month in the Jewish calendar where the flood of Noah started.
Yeah.
And that flood, it began with the 40 days and 40 nights of rain. Well, here I used a period of 40 to land on that date.
Yeah.
And so that's what got me going. And then also for the fact that Noah himself died 2006 years after creation, and if we were in the year 2006 when Christ's birth, so therefore there was another parallel there, and so that really drew my attention and started looking into other things. But I think what really is doing all the studies, we look at Matthew 24 and the signs Christ gives, and the first thing he says is World War will start. There'll be nation rising against nation, kingdom against kingdom.
Yeah.
And so I looked at the beginning of World War I, and then Israel in 47, 48, and then the Six-Day War. And what got me going is, what if these times are all important? Instead of just relying on one of them, what if we triangulate, in other words, and go, can we use like a period of a generation of 100 years, and then 70 years, and then 40 years? And that's where I started punching numbers in and looking at that information.
Wow. So. That's awesome. Okay, now, what numbers did you get when you came from, like, for instance, the siege of Babylon, or when Artaxerxes, I think it is, gave the decree, I think that's his name, gave the decree to restore Jerusalem? And then also go back to Abraham and some of the dates with Abraham coming forward, because I know you had 2,500 and something years, and it hit a specific date. And then also talk about 1914, 1967, 1947, 48, and then I got some more questions for you.
Okay. Well, 1914 is when World War I began, and I had seen where it said, I think Grant Jeffrey was the first one I read in his book that said, World War I started on the 9th of Av. Well, the 9th of Av is the infamous day where we have the 12 spies, and 10 give the bad report in Israel's history, and then they sentenced to 40 years in the wilderness. And on that anniversary day, both temples have been destroyed, and many other things. But so the fact that World War I would start on such a date, but also for the fact that if we go from the time when Nebuchadnezzar took the first part of the Babylonian captivity in 606 BC, and we go 2,520, just plain solar years, we wind in 1914.
Wow.
And actually, the Jehovah's Witnesses had used that date, thought that Christ was going to return in 1914, but he didn't. But yet we have World War I beginning in that year, and there's the sign. I believe it starts off the sequence where in Matthew 24. But see, the 1914 thing is very interesting because it's not only did it begin on 9th of Av, the war, but 3 years later we have the Balfour Declaration where we're looking for a Jewish homeland, and we have the British General Allenby that walks into Jerusalem without a shot being fired in 1917 on Hanukkah. Well, Hanukkah, and then when I saw that was on Hanukkah, all the bells and whistles went off, because before I'd looked through Daniel, looking at Daniel's period timings where you have 1,290 days, 1,335 days, or in Revelation we have 1,260, and you could lay those out if they all pivot off of Yom Kippur when Christ returns, I believe, to fulfill the feast. Then we see that these times in Daniel's fit between other dates. Well, the other days on the Jewish calendar that popped up in just that analysis alone would have been 9th of Av again, and the Hanukkah date. Well, these dates in World War I in 1914, 1917 were the exact same spacing as they would be in Daniel's future 70th week. And so that